About a month ago, I received the following request. It would be nice if you can add some tutorials about how to animate characters. Hey, well my friend, you asked the wrong person for many reasons, but I'll give you my best answer. Thankfully, I do have some animation background.
Yay.
I studied in one of the best animation schools in Canada.
Wow!
And I had some amazing teachers and classmates who taught me a lot. Unfortunately, that was a one-year only course back in 2008 and it was classical animation. You know, the one with the paper and pencils? Yeah, I'm old school. But thanks to Iclone 7, I was able to adapt quickly to 3D animation. And my teachers were so good that even after 11 years of not animating, I still retained some of the knowledge. I'll do you proud, Canada! I can't deny that I'm finding 3D animation more enjoyable than 2D. Nevertheless, the principles or rules on how to make your animation look better are pretty much the same. And yet, sometimes things that take seconds to draw can take up to weeks to create and rig properly. And this is a real pain when it comes to one of the most useful principles, squash and stretch. For example, when something remains the same shape during motion and it doesn't compress or expand, we automatically assume it must be made of a rigid, hard material like metal or plastic. And vice versa. The more organic the object is, the more flexible its movement. It's no surprise then that animators tend to exaggerate the squash and stretch of character faces the most to make them feel more alive. In this video, I'm going to try to copy this 2D effect for a 3D character. My Canadian animation education reputation depends on it. Now, in order to achieve this kind of flexibility, we need a proper rig. But since I don't have a degree in nuclear engineering, I'll use Iclone 7 since we're going for something simpler. Yep, that's my excuse. If you've seen my Judar video, you've probably noticed that I kind of tried squashing the face by playing with the face keys. But I'm not satisfied. I want to exaggerate even more. And for this purpose, I'll use my avatar, Annie. Yeah, it's an out of 3D body experience. To begin with, we have to create two basic morphs for the squashed and stretched face. If you're already in Iclone 7, select Edit in Character Creator option in the Modify section. Let's start with the squashed face. Play with the sliders as much as possible. Start with increasing the width of the face while decreasing its height. Exaggerate the cheeks. Don't forget you can edit the mesh as well. Squash and whiten the mouth, the nose, the eyes and the brows. Move the mouth higher and the brows lower as much as possible. You can even squash the eyeballs and the neck. The result will look weird, but that's what we're going after. Oh, and just in case, don't forget to turn your hair into an accessory while you're morphing the head. Squash and stretch it, and when you're done, you can turn it back into hair. Save your file as an iAvatar format and exit. Repeat all these steps, starting with your default character, and do the opposite for the stretched face. Save as a different iAvatar file. Now, go back to Iclone 7. Have your character selected and in the Modify section again, try to find the Morph Creator. Select the plus icon to import one of the new iAvatar files. You will get many new different sliders. Some of them will be completely useless, so feel free to delete them. The rest, slide them all the way to a 100% until you get the squashed version of your character. If something is missing, make sure you have the Show Child Morphs activated. Then press the baking button. Name the slider Squashed Face, for example, and don't forget to check the Remove Source slider upon creation box to keep things clean and organized. Press Create, and now you have the Squashed Face slider ready. Slide it to 100 to check the result and all the way back to 0. We are doing the stretched face now. Repeat the steps. Make sure to slide only the sliders for the stretched face to 100 and keep the rest to 0. Bake, name, etc. Okay, you can select the Update Morph to Iclone button. If it crashes, not to worry. Next time, try selecting the Send Replace to Iclone button instead. Not sure why, not sure what the difference is, but it doesn't crash, so I guess there is a difference. I just don't know what it is. Anyways, once your Iclone file is updated, you can find your new morphs in the Morph Animator box, right below the Morph Creator. Sliding these will create frame keys in your timeline. Okay, I'll go through a short clip I created for the purpose of this video to demonstrate how you can take advantage of these new morphs. Squashed and stretched faces are very commonly used when you switch from one expression to another in a very short time. It creates a more dynamic and interesting movement. Let's start with the 4 main poses: the default, squashed, stretched, and back to default. As you can probably tell, I took advantage of the face key options in Iclone 7 to even further exaggerate the squashed pose by playing with the expressions. I moved the brow even lower, squeezed the eyes shut, puffed the cheeks, scrunched the nose, and moved the mouth even higher. For the stretched pose, I made sure to move the brows higher, widen the eyes, open the jaw as much as possible. I also added some morphs for the irises and pupils, which work on the same principle. They're optional. To make the animation flow more nicely, I took advantage of another fundamental principle: anticipation. Anticipation comes a few frames before a major movement. It serves as a preparation by doing the exact opposite movement. For instance, Annie's squashed face can be considered an anticipation frame. However, because I'm keeping this position for a few frames, I decided to add another anticipation. Her super squashed expression is a major shift from the default, so to suggest that there will be a movement soon, I make the eyes wider and move the mouth lower slightly. I don't spend much time or try to exaggerate anything here, just hinting that bigger opposite action is coming is enough. Similarly, the next frame after the squashed face is slightly more exaggerated. This one is not necessary, especially if you're moving from squashed to stretched face as quickly as possible, but since I'm holding the squashed pose for a few frames, I thought it would look better. And here, almost in the middle, I have an in-between. It breaks the movement and allows me to play with the timing of the animation for each element. For instance, in this case, I wanted to have the stretched face come sooner, but for Annie to fully open her mouth and eyes a bit later. Thanks to this keyframe and the previous squashed keyframe, I'm able to move from one exaggerated pose to another in a more non-linear way, making the movement faster and more interesting. The remaining keyframes are just there to allow Annie to enter her resting position with slight animation in the expression. There is one more step that is absolutely necessary. If you right-click on the little keyframes and select the transition curve preset, a box will pop up with the different ways to control the timing of your animation. This is probably super important and I don't think my explanation will do it any justice. The default option is always linear, but if you want a cooler looking animation, try to use the other ones. The main ones I use are ease in, ease out, and ease in and out. I think the illustration is really good at explaining what they do. But I also occasionally use gain momentum before move and damping. With damping, for instance, the pose goes a bit even more extreme than the keyframe, creating this spring effect without the need of any additional frames. And if you select gain momentum, it will affect the previous frame. But of course, feel free to experiment as there are many different options, as you can see. And here is the final result. Well, that that was my first try, so I hope I get better by next time. In case you're wondering, I do have the curve editor too now. It was given to me for free by the Reillusion team. Bear in mind that it comes free with Iclone 8, so let me know if you would be interested in some tutorials. And if you're curious to know more about the 12 principles of animation, there is a very interesting webinar featuring Mark Diaz where he goes through all of them. I will leave a link in the descriptions. The medium is 2D, but the same rules apply. Wow, you made it to the end of the video! That's great! This was the longest video I've ever made and it took forever, but thank you so much for your patience. I really hope you enjoyed the tips and also the new launch area that I built with free assets from CG Trade. Check it out because this is one of the best websites ever.